Hello again, YouTubers. I've had a lot of people sort of request, well, not sort of, request for me to do a video on how to waterproof the XLX ESC by Castle Creations. A lot of people are using liquid electrical tape, spray on, and you got the dip, I believe, plastic dip, uh, all kind of stuff that it's what they used to use. Um, Problems with liquid electrical tape and plastic dip is over time it will get brittle and it will crack. Um, when I originally posted the picture of the things you're going to need to waterproof it, someone turned me on to something called silicone conformal coating, and that is this right here. It really doesn't look like much. It's silicone in a acetone, and it's got quite a few chemicals in it to keep it in a liquid state. And the great thing about this is you can use a very light coat. This is what it like the new Samsung Galaxy S7. This is what they use to waterproof their phone because it is so thin. You could waterproof an ESC with this or servo, and if you have a problem with it, you could send it back to whoever you bought it from, and they would never know that you waterproofed it because it is that thin. So here is the XLX ESC. The first thing you're going to have to do is there is plastic wrapping around the cat pack. This right here is the cat pack. Basically what the cat pack does is it keeps the voltage ripple down, which with brushless motors you have something called voltage ripple. Basically because you have a very high output jumping from 3 different wires, you have voltage ripple that goes back to your batteries, and when you're running 6S, you're running about 25.2 volts completely charged. So usually voltage ripple is, if you don't have a cat pack, 3, 4, possibly even 5 volts, and you never want your voltage ripple to be above 10% of your 5 or 10% of your voltage. Well, the XL2, the reason I went with the XLX is it has a 20 amp BEC compared to the XL2 that has a 5 amp BEC, and also the XLX comes with a cat pack, so it keeps down on voltage ripple. I've already put on a coat of. Basically what you're going to need to waterproof this is just the silicone conformal coating. You can get this from Amazon. I believe it was $11.97, and a little bit goes a long ways. I'll show how to do it in just a second, but you're going to need this, and for the bigger openings, like right here, and on the back where the motor wires come through, you're going to need to pump some silicone into that to make sure, because you're not going to know 100% that you got all that down in there waterproof. You want to basically cover the entire circuit board, the capacitors, which you have 1, 2, 3, 4 for the ESC, and then you have 4 for the cat pack. So you're going to want to waterproof all of those down here where they connect to the circuit board, and also up here where the metal is bare. So you're going to have to be careful with these wires. This is your receiver wire and your auxiliary wire. So be very careful with these. If you tug too hard, they will come off. I made a mistake. I ran mine in sand, my X-Max in sand, and even with the Dusty Motors cover, some sand got inside because I found out where the A-arms are, there's still holes that allow shit to get into the chassis. So sand got into the ESC and I wasn't able to clean it 100%. I just used some isopropyl alcohol, some Q-tips, got it as clean as I possibly could, and then put it on. But this is the process of waterproofing it. I'm going to start with this side first. I've already put on one coat. The thing about this is it's very, like I've said, it's a very thin. You probably can't even tell that I've already put some on. But basically you're going to take it, get some on the brush, and then simply brush it on. You're going to have to dip back in quite a bit. I usually will get a drop on there and then spread the drop around so you can see that it's moving some around that I've already put on. Get where the ESC, the capacitors connect to the circuit board. Get the bottom of the capacitors. And this is so thin that you really don't have to worry about using too much because it's not going to build up like plastic dip or liquid electrical tape. You're also going to want to get right here where the cat pack is installed to the wires. And again, work your way around all the capacitors. Get them fully coated. Flip it over. Now there are little lights on the XLX. These three little things right here, they're little LEDs. You have a yellow, a green, and a red. So using this instead of liquid electrical tape or plastic dip, you're actually going to be able to see it. I've always used epoxy in the past, but it does hold in heat. This will hold in a very small amount of heat. That's the great thing about this. So again, you just take it. All the wire connections you want to completely cover with this. I mean, you really can't use too much of this stuff because it is so thin. But that's basically the how-to of how to install this stuff. Just brush it on. And make sure you get everywhere you possibly can. The parts that you can't get to, get a drop on there. For this, I'll actually hold it. Like, say I want to get some down in this hole. So get a drop on here. And then just let it fall off. And then it will go down into that cavity. But you are still going to need to seal that cavity because there's not a 100% guarantee. And that's when you have this silicone that you're going to completely fill these two cavities up, because I'm not going to try to take this heat sink off this board, because if something does happen, I can send this back to Castle Creations, say, okay, something's gone wrong with my ESC, I need it fixed. And seeing that this is such a thin coating, they probably won't be able to tell that I've put a waterproof coating on this. But, I mean, if they look at my videos, I'm pretty much screwed. I can quickly show just how thin this is. I'm just going to rub some right on this. I don't know if you can see that, but that's how thin it is. I'm not going to keep that there. I'm going to wipe it back off. But that's how thin this stuff is. So, you don't have to worry about, like with other stuff, for it to hold in a lot of heat. So basically I'm just going to use Q-tip, some alcohol, and wipe it off the best I can. If not, it is silicone. I can scrape it off later. But just like that, what I just put on is now taken back off. It dries very quickly, but you still do want to give it a good 24 hours. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to put probably about 3 coats on. And then, oh yeah, if you have a little extra wire right here from when you soldered, I will admit those bullet connectors and 8-gauge wire, that's some pretty tough shit to solder. I mean, I even have a digital soldering iron that goes up to 950 degrees, and I still had somewhat of a tough time because the wire absorbs so much of the heat, and so do the bullets, which are, I believe, copper. Yeah, copper. But I'm not going to do it, but I'll sort of show what you're going to do after you apply the silicone conformal coating. See, there's been urethane conformal coating. There's been several conformal coatings, but silicone is the best because it is best waterproof. I mean, everybody knows silicone, water is just going to bead right off of. It's going to stick, and it's going to protect anything that you want to waterproof. You can do servos with this. You can take apart a servo. Make sure you grease around the potentiometer. If you need a readout about what parts are on a servo, you're going to have to look that up. I'm sorry. But with a servo, there is a circuit board. You're going to want to just take this stuff and cover the circuit board. That's it. I've always, and like I said earlier, I've always used epoxy in the past because it's clear. It allows me to see the lights just in case something goes wrong. I'll be able to see, okay, what's it flashing, what colors are flashing, and what is the sequence, so I can look it up. That's the pattern, and okay, that's what's wrong. And that's why I like this stuff so much. It allows me to put on a very liberal amount, and it's still, I mean, hell, I'm probably haven't even put on a 32nd of an inch worth. So it's not going to hold in heat. All it's going to do is make sure, and I will go ahead and say this, I'm not 100% waterproofing mine. I'm making mine water resistant. I have no plans of taking my X-Max. With all the money I have into my X-Max, I am not about to, it's probably sitting about, with the truck, about $2,500 right now. I'm not about to completely submerge the entire truck. You're going to ruin bearings, electrical parts. You never know. And especially with the bearings, you're going to have to completely rip that sumbitch down and clean and re-grease every single bearing. So, honestly, I'm not the type that, I mean, yes, I'll run it through water, but I'll never completely submerge it. But this will basically allow you to, like the Monster, it's waterproof, so you can use it just like that. The Hobby Wing Max 5. Now you'll have. That's the one thing that people really liked about the Hobby Wing Max 5 was it was waterproof. It does not have nearly as much programming capability as the XLX does, but everybody wanted that because it was waterproof. Well, this silicone conformal coating is so thin that you can waterproof this, and if anything goes wrong, you can still send it back to Castle, say something went wrong, and if you're very good about it, if you're very discreet about putting it on, which I will admit I'm not, I'm just trying to get it on. I've had this for about 2 months now. I've tested the hell out of it. It works great. So, I mean, if you do it correctly and you get just a light coating on to protect everything, if something goes wrong, you can send it back. It won't. Technically, it will void your warranty, but if Castle doesn't see it, it won't void your warranty. They're going to see liquid electrical tape, plastic dip, epoxy. That stuff is very thick. This stuff is very thin. I mean, you can tell by just the viscosity of it. It's the viscosity of acetone. I mean, probably a little thicker because it does have silicone in it, but it's nothing compared to the other stuff. So basically, you just want to cover all the circuit boards, all the capacitors, all the connections, except the motor connections, the battery connectors, like like I said, where the cat pack is installed, where the battery wire is installed to the ESC itself. You're gonna want to put the conformal coating on it. Completely cover it. Like I said, the circuit board. Completely cover all wires where they connect to the board. Pull them back. Get up underneath them. Like right now. I need to do that real quick. So I'm just going to get a little bit on my brush. And then just put it on the wires. But one thing I will say is, I'll point something out real quick. You're not going to want to you're going to want to waterproof this down at the edge of it, but not on top. There's a lot of heat coming off of this because this is basically the brain of your ESC, this part right here. So, waterproof the bottom of it, and around the sides, but not right on top because this has a direct. It touches directly to the outer casing, which I've already taken off, obviously, and all the heat goes to the heat sink, and that's how the heat is taken away. This is basically the ECU. Basically your main microcomputer. That's what that part right there is. So a lot of electricity is going to go through it, so a lot of heat is going to be generated. But that's basically it on how to waterproof the Castle Creations XLX. And I mean, you really can't waterproof the fan. They're not waterproof. Yes, they're brushless, but usually with those fans, if they get wet, they'll shut off. And then once they dry off, they'll come back on because they're not brushed. I mean, as long as you protect them correctly, you'll be fine. But the biggest thing is always completely coat the circuit board. All the transistors, resistors, diodes, shit. Why can I not think of that? The chips. You just want to protect all the electronics, so if water gets on it, you won't fry it. So that's basically it for this video. If you have any questions, like usual, hit me down in the comments. There are other videos on how to, I don't have them, but there's one guy that has a video on how to waterproof a servo with this. It can even be a regular servo. You can waterproof it using this stuff. This is some really great stuff. If you're a hobbyist, you really want this. I promise you. It will be your best friend when it comes to waterproofing stuff. And see, I've actually got some on my skin now. But it dries so fast. See, it's already dry. That's how fast this stuff dries. But you want to let it cure. It may dry, but you really want it to completely cure. You want all of the extra chemicals to completely get out of the silicone and only have the silicone on there. So basically what I'm going to do now is after I get done filming this video, I'm going to put one last coat over everything, and then I'm going to let it dry. And then about 3 or 4 hours later, I'm going to take this silicone and I'm going to put it in these two cavities, and then I'm going to let it sit for 24 hours. You want to let silicone sit for 24 hours to let it cure completely. Don't rush it. You rush it, you're going to fuck something up. So until next time, peace.